What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you an early preview of Warhammer 40k Mechanicus 2. Sequel, of course, to the original Mechanicus, and both of these games are in fact TRPGs or tactical RPGs. Now, where the original game saw you in control of the Mechanicus itself as they entered into a conflict with the Necrons, Mechanicus 2 aims to be sort of bigger and better in the sense that it's going to offer two campaigns, one where you play as the Mechanicus and one where you play as the Necrons as well. Now, I'm able to bring you this preview, obviously, because the publisher for the title actually reached out a couple days ago and asked if I was interested in taking a look at the prologue as part of an early preview. Now, from what I understand, Mechanicus 2 is supposed to be out sometime in 2025, but they still don't have a release date. And when they offered up this preview, there was like no embargo timing or anything, so I don't know if there's going to be like an announcement soon or anything like that, so we'll simply have to wait and see. But in the meantime, given how much I enjoyed the original Mechanicus, I obviously wanted to dive into this and talk a little bit about what we could expect, because the original game was a very good tactical experience. A little on the short and sweet side, not a terribly long game by any means. It had a lot of interesting mechanics and abilities, especially around the Mechanicus's cognition ability, which fueled a lot of their more interesting stuff. Mechanicus 2, of course, takes a lot of that and tries to make it more interesting with things like leaders, the Necrons, of course, having their own system that we'll get into, and a host of other things going on as well. Now, keep in mind, I just had access to the prologue, basically, so I don't have answers for absolutely everything, mind you, but there is a fair bit that I do know. So, the game itself gets off to a pretty straightforward start when the Adeptus Mechanicus ventures into a Necron tomb which awakes the local Varguard, Nefershah. What then plays out is a series of battles between the two where you hop back and forth, kind of exploring what each faction has to offer, before these little skirmishes ultimately trigger the wider conflict for the Forge world, which is currently under the control of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Now, I tell you all that to mention that some of you may very well be aware that there was a reveal for this game that mentioned that the Leagues of Votann would be involved somehow. I did not see that in the prologue, and I'm still not really sure what their involvement is exactly, but we do know they will be involved in these campaigns in some way, but what they want, what their goals are, remain a mystery. With that in mind, let's actually talk about the gameplay side of things. So outside of just looking better than the original pretty much straight away, the Adeptus Mechanicus side of things is mostly the same in the sense that what they really try to do is build up cognition points that they can then use to do other more interesting things like utilize skills and the like. Basically, a lot of the individual Mechanicus units have the ability to generate cognition either by taking damage, dealing it, or, fulfilling certain conditions based on their skills and perks, that kind of stuff. And then, of course, you can spend that cognition to do the better and more powerful abilities. Now, the simplest version of this comes from your leader, whose canticle just increases the damage they deal by +1, but this also actually fuels a lot of the leader's abilities as well. In this little demo, specifically, it allowed you to utilize your melee swings or a specific one of your ranged weapons that you had available to you. Now, that's probably a good time to mention that the leaders will play a pretty central role in this one, their goal basically being to command and direct all of the smaller units that will be accompanying them. Now, your leader's survival is paramount. In fact, I'm pretty sure you get a game over if they actually die. Or at least a failed mission, anyway. Now, for the Mechanicus, their leader abilities basically come down to the canticle. We see the one example that I've already mentioned here, but what about the Necrons? Well, they obviously play a little bit differently. For starters, when they initially die in combat, they kind of take a knee and activate their reanimation protocols, and after so many rounds they will get back up if they are not hit again in that time frame. Your leader actually gets the ability to accelerate this process with their Arise ability, which just kind of forces all of the currently down Necrons to reanimate, but there is actually a slightly more subtle thing about it as well. You see, the Mechanicus tends to utilize cover to actually get behind it for its intended purpose, whereas the Necrons can do things like more easily destroy cover because it is destroyable in this version. So between that and the reanimation protocols, the Necrons tend to be a bit hardier, whereas the Mechanicus tends to be a bit more frail, but has seemingly a little more tactical depth to what they do. though clearly we haven't seen all the leaders and everything, so that's kind of just going off what you see in this prologue. I imagine it will change a little bit, and in fact, while I don't have anything to show you, just going off of what they've released previously, like screenshots and things on Steam as an example, we do know there's going to be like research trees, there's multiple leaders, things to build up, so it may very well be the case that that's just kind of how it plays out in this prologue ultimately. But speaking of things that are mentioned on the Steam page, but are not things I've experienced yet, but I'm curious about, are things like, for instance, it mentions the campaigns will see you capturing and defending regions, and that somehow this will involve generating and managing resources as well. So that could be things like for the research tree, or it might be more direct stuff, like maybe to recruit units, that kind of thing. And I wanted to mention that specifically because just keep in mind there might be a more strategical layer on top of the more tactical battles you're actually going to get up to, which are typically, at least by the first game standards and what I've played in this prologue, usually a little more quick and snappy than you might expect. But one of the other big things I still need to get around to mentioning is that the Mechanicus has their cognition ability, but the Necrons have a separate ability called Dominion. So Dominion for the Necrons is built up purely by simply damaging the enemy. Every time you deal damage, you gain the equivalent amount of Dominion, and as you gain this, you'll actually start to gain levels. This is important because for the Necrons, this is actually what is going to give them access to their better and better skills. So the longer they are in combat, the stronger they get, because the Dominion level actually provides both passive bonuses to things like damage and whatnot, but also then unlocks the ability to actually use their more advanced abilities. Like for instance, the Scarabs, if you're hanging around long enough, get the ability to sort of self-destruct on enemies, and given how disposable they are and often activated through reinforcements anyways, that can be a particularly strong way to go. But putting all that together so we can start wrapping this video up, I would say, at least from what I've played in this prologue, which is obviously a bit limited though, it seems like a lot of what Mechanicus 2 is trying to do is simply be bigger and better than that original title, and I think honestly just adding the ability to actually play as the Necrons in a separate campaign is going to add a lot of diversity to the gameplay that the first one kind of lacked, because once you figured out some of the core moves and stuff in order to gain cognition in the first one, most of the fights kind of played out the same way after that. And I think with this system and the changes they've made with like leaders and things, there's more options probably going to be available to you, which will make for some more interesting situations that will hopefully provide a little bit more playtime and gameplay than the original game did, because while I enjoyed that game a lot, it definitely had the potential to get a bit samey after a while. But all in all, as far as Mechanicus 2 goes, I like what I see thus far. I'm looking forward to diving into it whenever it actually fully releases. I enjoy a good little TRPG every once in a while, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the Leagues of Votann wind up being involved in the end. As for today, I think that's pretty much going to do it for this particular video. I certainly hope you enjoyed it. By all means, let me know how you feel about this one down in the comment section below, which of course means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.